Hey everyone, this is Josh here. This is just a quick video for the success in the class section. I wanted to offer you guys a little bit of clarity and a little bit of focus, okay, to help you guys be successful here. So, on the focus side, we'll start there. I do want to mention, right, this is a summer class, and as such, this is only 6 weeks. Normally, this class is 16 weeks. That means that you've decided to take a class that is hyper intensive, right? And that's totally okay. I did that when I was a student sometimes. Nothing wrong with it. But just be cognizant of the fact that that means that you're basically doing like 2.5 weeks worth of work every week, almost 3 weeks worth of work every week. And so you really need to stay on top of the class. You really need to stay on top of your work in the class. Make sure that you're, doing the readings, doing the assignments, planning ahead. This is not a situation where you wait till the last minute, is my advice. As I make very clear in the syllabus and in other materials, I don't take late work. And so, everything in this class is basically due on Fridays at 11:59 p.m. It's 11:59 p.m. because if you say 12 a.m., people get confused if you mean midnight or noon. And so it's 11:59 p.m. This is not a situation, my class or any other, where you're going to want to decide Friday at 10 p.m. to start working on stuff. That's a real recipe for failure, because then you're going to send me a message at 3 minutes after midnight going, Josh, I almost had it in. Let me just attach it and send it to you. I can't keep track of all the emails that I get. Also, when you send it to me like that, I can't run it through the plagiarism software, all of these other issues, right? So, part of being in college is learning that responsibility, okay? And so, plan ahead, plan ahead. If you want to do an assignment that week, do it early. Don't wait till the last minute, This is an intensive situation that you are in. It's totally doable. Plenty of students do it. Plenty of students have done it before. Plenty of students have done it with me before. And so there's no barrier to your success here, except that you have to take your own educational future into your hands. So make sure that you are doing that, okay? And so just be cognizant of that in terms of your focus. Do not be surprised again that you're probably going to need to put a little bit of time into this class kind of every day, in terms of doing the readings, in terms of watching the videos, in terms of working on assignments, those kinds of things, right? So get your calendar out, plan it out around your work schedule, around your other classes, around the things that you have going on, and you absolutely can be successful. You just really need to be prepared for it, okay? So that's my advice. Now, in terms of some of the other things, I did want to talk a little bit about the assignments, just so that we're totally clear. In this class, we basically have 3 assignments. One is the exams. There are 2 exams. You could call it a midterm and a final. It's not technically a final because it's not comprehensive. Exam 1 covers the first half of the class. Exam 2 covers the second half of the class, right? But so at the midpoint, for a summer term, that would be week 3, you have a midterm. It'll cover all the material leading up to that. Week 6, which is the end of the semester for us, you will have everything that has been covered since exam 1, okay? These are going to be 50 question tests, 50 question multiple choice exams. I said that weird. And they are online, they are on Canvas. It is open book, it is open note. I do not use HonorLock or any other kind of testing software. The idea being that you need to have your reading notes organized, your lecture notes organized, all of your materials organized, so that if you do run across a question you don't know, you know where to find that information quickly. And if you're thinking, great, I'll just look everything up, which unfortunately does happen, I will tell you what that looks like from my end, which is every single semester, whether it's summer or otherwise, I have a student that goes, Josh, the timer just ran out on me, man. I don't know what happened. And I go, cool. Every single thing you do on Canvas, I can see, right? And so then I look up their exam, and they open question 1, and it takes them 3.5 minutes to answer because they were Googling it. And then they answer it, and then they go to question 2, and it takes them 2.5 minutes to answer it. And then question 4 takes them 3 minutes to answer, and then on and on and on, and they get to question like 25 out of 50, and they run out of time, you know. And I go, well, yeah, you were probably looking everything up because you didn't do the reading and you didn't study and you didn't prepare and you used the 50 minutes that you have for the exam and you ran out of time. I'm sorry, that's your grade, period. You know, if you've done the reading, if you have your notes prepared, if you are ready for the exam, it's really not hard. It's really, really not hard. But if you haven't, it's going to be a struggle. You don't really have the time to just Google everything and be like, I can cheat on this shit so easy. That's not how it works, you know. So be prepared for the exam, okay? Get your stuff together for the exam. The other thing that I will say is this is an online exam, meaning you need to have a good internet connection. I am very unsympathetic when people message me and go, well, you know, I was driving to Miami and I decided to take the exam on my phone and it cut out on me. Seriously? You thought that that was a good idea? If you're having problems with your laptop, if you're having problems with your internet connection, go to the library and take it. You know, no, if you're worried about it, know how to hotspot your phone so that you can use that if your internet goes out. Be prepared. It's an online exam. Be prepared to be online to take it, right? That should be pretty obvious, and unfortunately, it is not for some students, right? The other thing is, I try to be pretty generous. I give you 3 days to take the exam, okay? And you can take it at any point in those 3 days. Because of that, I am profoundly unsympathetic if somebody tells me, Josh, I just ran out of time and I couldn't take the exam. And I go, why didn't you take it Wednesday? Why didn't you take it Wednesday morning? Why didn't you take it Wednesday afternoon? Why didn't you take it Wednesday evening? Why didn't you take it Thursday morning? Thursday afternoon? Thursday evening? Why didn't you take it Friday morning? Friday afternoon? Friday... Oh, gee, I just ran out of time. I had to work Friday. Well, you knew you had to work. Take it Wednesday. I got a flat tire. I got sick. Take it Wednesday. Take it Wednesday. Right? Then you don't run out of time. Nothing unexpected. Oh, you got a flat tire on Wednesday? Cool. Then you can take it Thursday. You got a second flat tire on Thursday? Take it Friday. You got a third flat tire? Come on. I'm not that dumb. Right? So I'm very unsympathetic. Be prepared to take your exam. Be prepared to take it early. Do not put it off to the last minute. You are not a child. This is a place of adults. Even if you're a dual enrollment student, you have chosen to be in a setting that is for adults. I expect you to behave like an adult. You know, that's just real life. So I'm very unsympathetic when I give you certainly more time than I ever got on exams. I was never given 3 days to take an exam as a student. So I give you 3 whole days, and it's open book and open note, and I don't use honor lock. I'm really unsympathetic when I give that much allowance and a student's like, gee, I still couldn't get it done. Well, you failed. Sorry. Should I come to the house and take it for you? Come on, right? So, you know, excuse me, my exams are not hard. They're very straightforward. They cover the material that we cover in class. I don't try to ask you oddball questions. I'm not saying it's super easy. It is open book, open note after all. But it's nothing out of the blue. I'm not going to ask you some weird ass question like what color shirt I was wearing when we talked about primates or something dumb like that, right? I'm going to ask you about material that we cover, you know, about things that are relevant to anthropology. Second, we have assignments, right? Activities, I guess I should call it. The activities are, we have one a week, right? They pretty much correspond to the modules because this is compressed down. You might be reading one chapter and be like, what does that have to do with the assignment? It might be the next chapter, the chapter after, because some weeks have like 3 different chapters that we talk about, you know. And so it's in there though, right? I promise, right? But they're not meant to be super hard. It's meant to help you engage with the material, maybe understand a little bit better, understand how anthropologists think about it, maybe think about some things in new different ways, you know, stuff like that. And so, yeah. So yes, so those are the activities. Third is the papers, right? Every chapter has a paper, and let me say right off the bat, throughout these videos that you will watch of me, or maybe materials that I posted, you might hear me say like the reading this week. What I mean is the reading for this module. I'm so used to talking about it in a 16-week semester that I say week instead of module. So, obviously use the context clues. If I say like, oh, you have one reading this week, what I mean is you have one reading for this module, right? And so the way it's structured for us is that with the papers, there are 16 chapters that we read. Of those 16, you are assigned all 16 to read. Of those readings, you will do response papers. I will keep the top 8 scores. Okay, now some people are often confused about this. They say we only have to write 8. Technically, yes. What I mean by this is I will drop the lowest 8 scores. So let's say that you write your first paper or you write your 5th paper or whatever, and you don't love the grade. You were running late. You were just trying to get it in on time. It happens. I understand. And so you only wrote 1 page instead of 2 full pages, and maybe you didn't format it right, and it comes back and you get like a 6 out of 10. And you go, dang, that's not what I wanted. No problem. You can write 9 papers. I will drop the lowest 8. In your case, that would be 7 zeros and that 1 grade of 6 that you didn't like. And I'll keep the highest 8. Canvas does this automatically, right? So you keep the highest 8 scores, you drop the lowest 8 scores. For most students, that means that they write 8 papers and then they drop 8 zeros. For some students, again, that means that they keep the highest 8 and they drop 7 zeros and a 6, or 6 zeros and a couple of 7s, or whatever it is. Does that make sense, right? So you can write more than 8. It will only keep 8. Okay? Now, you choose which chapters you write on, right? Because this is a condensed semester, as I said, I'll often say like week, what I mean is module. You will have 3 modules a week, except for week 3 and week 6, where you will only have 2 modules. One module has 1 chapter to read. So weeks 1 and 2, 4 and 5 will have 3 modules and 3 chapters to read. Okay? Because you have an exam on week 3 and week 6, there's only 2 modules. Makes it a little bit easier on you, right? And so 2 modules, 2 chapters. You have to write 8 papers, meaning 4 of the weeks of the semester, you only need to write 1 paper. Even though you're assigned 3 that week, hypothetically here, you could write 1 each week, and then 2 of the weeks you have to write 2. Now, you can structure this how you want. Some students, week 2, they'll write all 3 papers. Any week, let's say hypothetically. Week 1, you have 3 assigned chapters. You could write 3 papers, or you could write 2, or you could write 1, or you could write 0. That's up to you. You're not behind at that point, okay? You have to write 8 for the semester. How you choose to pick those, again, is up to you, all right? Now, with that said, bear in mind, that means that when we pass, 8 chapters, when we pass the halfway point, that means you have to write all the rest, right? So I would highly recommend you do not wait to the second half of the semester. I'll be blunt when I say smart students maybe write a little heavier in the beginning, because at the end of the semester, my class is pretty evenly spaced, but I know in other classes maybe you have a big project due at the end of the semester, or you have a big comprehensive final due at the end of the semester. And so the last week of the semester, you don't want to have to bother writing a paper with me. You got other stuff to focus on. Smart students are going to front load it. They're going to get a bunch done in the beginning so that at the end they can focus on those big projects, those comprehensive finals, that kind of thing. That's your decision to make, okay? I do not take papers late. for any reason whatsoever. They are due Friday at 11:59. So week 1, we have chapter 1, 2, and 3. At 11:59 p.m. on Friday, those 3 close. You cannot turn them in, period. Move on to the next one. Now, before you think I'm a total ass for doing that, the reason I do it is because I used to take late papers. And what would happen is students would, and I would mark them down, 10% per day that they were late or something like that. What would happen is students would miss that Friday deadline. And they'd be like, oh my God, I didn't do those. I have to turn them in. I have to turn them in. And so then they would end up spending most of the next, 4 or 5 days writing those, turning them in. Except I'd mark them down, and by the time I was done marking them down, even if they wrote a great paper, they got like a D on it. And because they had spent most of the week writing last week's papers, guess what they did with this week's papers? They were late. And so then they'd turn those in the next week. And even though they wrote a fine paper, those papers got D's, And I realized that students were writing good papers, but because they thought, I missed this, I have to turn it in, they were kind of shooting themselves in the foot. And so I said, you know what? I will not take them late, period. For any reason, for any exception whatsoever, right? And I actually saw my student grades go up, right? So I do this for students. I do this to try to help you focus. I do this to try to help you improve your grade, right? I literally saw student grades go up when I decided on this rule. The other reason I don't take late work is that I don't particularly enjoy being a hall monitor. I don't like the idea that it's up to me to decide what is and is not an acceptable excuse for you missing something, right? I just don't think it's fair because it's not. It's uneven. You tell me like, hey Josh, I was just dealing with things, and I go, great. You need to be dealing with your education. Maybe you were really dealing with some things, and it's not particularly fair of me to be dismissive of your feelings. You're sick. Okay. Well, some students have insurance and some students don't. So how do I know if you're sick? You go to the doctor? Well, then my students that don't have insurance, who can't afford to go to the doctor, don't. So they get screwed over? That's also not fair. I don't like the idea of me having this arbitrary, unbalanced decision-making power. So I don't have it. I just don't take anything late ever. That's also why I let you drop half of the assignments. You have 16 chapters to write, and I let you drop half. I certainly never had a professor let me drop half of the papers, right? And so I think that that's a pretty even-handed way to approach it. I think it's a pretty fair way to approach it. It's probably the best that there is. I know that some of you are going to be like, well, it did get me in the foot because I was legitimately sick and I had legitimate things happen. I get that. I do understand that. And I'm sure that unfortunately sometimes students, it's not the best for, excuse me, certain individual students at certain times. But in 15 years of teaching, 16, I don't remember, that's the most even-handed way that I've come about it, is to try to remove my opinion from what is and is not valid, from what is and is not acceptable, by offering the ability for you to determine when you do it, and by allowing you to work ahead. Every single chapter is open right now. The first day of class, every chapter was open. Work ahead, right? If you're like, man, I work all week and Friday's my only day, and so it's right at the end of it, cool. Skip this week and start on next week's. Work ahead so that you're never under the gun, right? Take that responsibility, right? That's my best advice, right? In terms of the content of the paper, I strongly encourage you to read the guide, How to Format a Paper. That tells you how to format it, what it should look like. It's modeling it. You can see it. I explain it. I tell you what I'm looking for in terms of you engaging with the author's ideas. I don't want a summary. I know what the chapters say. I've read them many times. I don't need you to summarize them for me. Also, you're an adult. Summarizing is something we expect middle schoolers to do. I expect you to engage with ideas, right? I expect you to reflect. I expect you to analyze, right? to link it to other learning, right? To show some synthesis, some analysis, some deeper thought to these things, rather than the author said this, and then he said this, and then he said this other thing. Great, that proves you know how to read. So does every third grader. That's not college level work. College level work is saying the author is making these arguments. This is the evidence that they are using, right? This is how I've interpreted these things. This is what I think about these things. This is, how it links to other classes that I have taken, other books that I have read, other articles that I've engaged with. This is, how it reflects on my major. This is all of these different things, bringing different sources of information together to make something whole. That's actually meaningful, right? That actually shows intelligence. Knowing that the author said X, Y, and Z, that's not, So that's what I'm looking for in the papers, right? And again, a lot of students are very sloppy with things like formatting. It's something that I didn't used to take seriously, and I do now, because I can tell you from personal experience. When you apply to the university, when you don't fill out the paperwork right, it goes in the trash. They've got thousands and thousands of applicants. They're trying to weed through them quickly. You can't follow basic instructions? Cool, let me move on to the next one. When you fill out a job application, when you fill out a grant, when you fill out anything, you can't follow basic instructions. I've got 1,000 people that applied for 10 positions. I need to move through these quickly. And if you can't follow basic instructions, I don't need to know anything else about you, trash. Right? You will find that to be much more common than you might think. And so following the basic instructions, Times New Roman, 12-point type, double spaced, normal 1-inch margins, very basic things like that are a skill that you should have and an ability that you should have, right? And so make sure that you are following that, right? It is 2 full pages of text. Students will write a page and then 1 sentence on page 2 and be shocked when I go, you only did half the assignment. They go, it was 2 pages. Again, I am not your 9th grade English teacher, right? You are in college now. That is not 2 pages. You know it and I know it, right? Don't sit there and try to use 9,000 words when 2 will do, right? When your opening sentence is, I am writing this paper about anthropology for Joshua Crosby's anthropology class at Hillsborough College at the Dale Mabry campus in the summer of this year. You and I both know that that is just word bullshit that you are adding to fluff out your paper. And it tells me exactly the kind of student you are, and I'm then going to grade your paper like that. So take your work seriously, and I will take you seriously. I think that's fair, yes, right? I'm not a hard grader. I don't have an axe to grind. I really love teaching. I really love students. I don't do this for the money or the fame, which is good because there's not much of either involved in being a community college teacher, right? I do this because I love it. I want to help you succeed. There is no reason that you should not get an A in this class. There's no reason that every student shouldn't get an A in this class. I don't grade on a curve. If every one of you gets an A, I'd love it. I'd go to my dean and be like, you see how great I am? Every one of them got an A. Like, I'm not trying to fail anybody. I'm not, I want all of you to be successful, okay? And so just, follow the instructions, do the readings, do the assignments, and you will get an A in this class, right? You will be successful here, okay? If you have questions, don't hesitate to communicate with me. Don't hesitate to reach out with me. That is, in fact, what I'm here for, right? So I'm here to help. So good luck. I think we're going to have a good semester. I hope that you enjoy it. And I will hopefully talk to you all soon.